Hello, everyone. Good to see you. Today we're in Luke chapter 22. Let's begin reading. You all know that I like to keep these videos short. So we do, okay? Now, it says, now the feast of unleavened bread drew near, which is called Passover. And the chief priests and the scribes sought how they might kill him, for they feared the people. Then Satan entered Judas, surnamed Iscariot, who was numbered among the 12. My son was listening to me make this video, and he asked me, he said, can Satan just enter into anybody he wants to? No, he can't. A person has to leave the door open. Satan has to have an in to get into a person. He can't just force himself in. You have to entertain Satan for him to get in. It's like an invitation, okay? And then he can come in. But otherwise, he cannot, okay? If you're a believer and you're righteous before God and you're a son or a daughter of God, you would have to leave the door open to Satan for him to come in. All right, let's continue. So he went his way and conferred with the chief priests and captains how he might betray him to them. And they were glad and agreed to give him money. So he promised and sought opportunity to betray him and them in the absence of the multitudes. So they wanted it to be private when they grabbed up Jesus. Then came the day of unleavened bread, which is the Passover, which is when the Passover must be killed. And he sent Peter and John, saying, go and prepare the Passover for us, that we may eat. So they said to him, where do you want us to prepare? And he said to them, behold, when you have entered the city, a man will meet you carrying a pitcher of water. Follow him into the house which he enters. Then you say to the master of the house, the teacher says to you, where is the guest room where I may eat the Passover with my disciples? And he will show you a large furnished upper room. There make ready. So they went and found it just as he had said to them, and they prepared the Passover. Then the hour had come, he sat down, and the 12 apostles with him. Then he said to them, with fervent desire, I have desired to eat this Passover before I suffer. Or he meant to eat it with them before he suffer. For I say to you, I will no longer eat it until it is fulfilled in the kingdom of God. Then he took the cup and gave thanks and said, take this and divide it among yourselves. For I say to you, I will not drink of the fruit of the vine until the kingdom of God comes. And he took the bread, gave thanks and broke it, and gave it to them, saying, this is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. Likewise, he also took the cup after supper, saying, this cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is shed for you. But behold, the hand of my betrayer is with me on the table. And truly the Son of Man goes as it has been determined, but woe to that man whom he is betrayed. Then they began to question among themselves which of them it was who would do this thing. Okay, let's talk about this just a little bit. Now, let me give you some scriptures. If you want to learn more about the Lord's Supper or communion, there's some verses here you can look up and read. One of them is Matthew 26:26, Mark 14:22, 1 Peter 2:24, 1 Corinthians 11:23 through 26. If you look those up, it'll just give you just a little more insight until about taking communion. Okay, we take communion for it. Jesus says, "Do this in remembrance of me." So when you do it, you remember what Jesus did for you. That's what taking communion is. Okay, you do it in remembrance. Now, there was also a dispute among them as to which of them should be considered the greatest. And he said to them, "The kings of the Gentiles exercise lordship over them, and those who exercise authority over them are called benefactors. But not so among you. On the contrary, he who is greatest among you, let him be the younger, and he who governs as he who serves. And who is greater, he who sits at the table or he who serves? Is it not he who sits at the table? Yet I am among you as one of you who serves." Okay? "But you are those who have continued with me in my trials, and I bestow upon you a kingdom, just as my Father bestowed upon me, that you may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom, and sit on thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel." So he was telling them that they were going to have a part in heaven with him, and that the 12 apostles were going to judge the 12 tribes of Israel. That's to me, that sounds like a great honor. "And the Lord said, 'Simon, Simon, indeed, Satan has asked for you, that he may sift you as wheat. But I have prayed for you, that your faith should not fail, and when you have returned to me, strengthen your brethren.'" He says, when you have returned to me, strengthen your brethren. But he said to him, "Lord, I am ready to go with you, both to prison and to death." And he said, "I tell you, Peter, the rooster shall not crow this day before you deny me 3 times that you know me." And he said to them, "When I sent you out without money bag, without a knapsack, and sandals, did you lack anything?" So they said, "Nothing." Then he said to them, "But now he who has a money bag, let him take it, and likewise a knapsack. And he who has a sword, and he who has not a sword, let him sell his garment and buy one. For I say to you that this which is written must still be accomplished in me. And he was numbered with the transgressors, for the things concerning me have an end." So they said, Look, here are 2 swords. And he said to them, "It is enough." Coming out, he went to the Mount of Olives, and he was as he was accustomed to, and his disciples also followed him. When he came to the place, he said to them, "Pray that you may not enter into temptation." And he withdrew from them about a stone's throw, and he knelt down and prayed, saying, "Father, if it is your will, take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done." Then an angel appeared to him from heaven and strengthened him. and being in agony, he prayed more earnestly. Then his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down on the ground. When he rose from prayer and had come to his disciples, he found them sleeping from sorrow. Then he said to them, "Why do you sleep? Rise, pray, lest you enter into temptation." And while he was still speaking, behold, a multitude, and he who was called Judas, one of the 12, went before them and drew near to Jesus to kiss him. But Jesus said to him, "Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?" Then those around him saw what was going to happen. They said to him, "Lord, shall we strike with the sword?" And one of them struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his right ear. So the one that got so anxious with the sword was Peter. And evidently, I'm sure he wasn't aiming for the ear. He's probably aiming for the middle of the guy's head. And his ear was hanging there. But Jesus answered and said, "Permit even this." And he touched his ear and healed him. So Jesus reattached the ear. Then Jesus said to the chief priests, captains of the temple, and elders who had come to him, "Have you come out as against a robber with swords and clubs? When I was with you daily in the temple, you did not try to seize me, but this is your hour and the power of darkness." Having arrested him, they led him and brought him into the high priest's house. But Peter followed in a distance. But when they had kindled a fire in the midst of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter sat among them. And a certain servant girl, seeing him as he sat by the fire, looked intently at him and said, "This man is also with him." But he denied him, saying, "Woman, I do not know him." And after a little while, another saw him and said, "You also are of them." But Peter said, "Man, I am not." Then after about an hour had passed, another confidently affirmed, saying, "Surely this fellow also was with him, for he is a Galilean." But Peter said, "Man, I do not know what you are saying." And immediately, while he was still speaking, the rooster crowed, and the Lord turned and looked at Peter. Then Peter remembered the words of the Lord, how he had said to him, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." So Peter went out and wept bitterly. Now the men who held Jesus mocked him and beat him. And having blindfolded him, they struck him in the face and asked him, saying, "Prophesy, who is the one who struck you?" And many other things they blasphemed and spoke against him. As soon as it was day, the elders of the people, both chief priests and scribes, came together and led him into their council, saying, "If you are the Christ, tell us." But he said to them, "If I tell you, will you by no means believe?" He was saying, if I tell you, you won't believe. "And if I also ask you, you will by no means answer me or let me go. Hereafter, the Son of Man will sit on the right hand of the power of God." Then they all said, "You are the Son of God?" So he said to them, "You rightly say I am." And they said, "What further testimony do we need? For we have heard it ourselves from your own mouth." And that concludes the chapter. There's a lot there to think about. Okay, that concludes the chapter. I'll see you tomorrow. God bless you.